Hello, this is Dr. Nuke. Right now I'm going to talk to you about the settling of England by the Germanic tribes starting in the 400s AD, after late Roman times. The Roman legions pulled out of Britain in the year 410 AD. And the Saxons and the Angles started settling what is now England shortly thereafter. And also the Jutes and the Danes. Eventually, the Angles and the Saxons spread throughout what's now England, either mixing with or to some extent mixing with, to some extent replacing people who were there before, Romans and Celts. And then later on, the Danes moved in and ruled over much of England for a while. And then later on, England became a unified state on its own after the Danes left. In England, place names ending with BY are of Danish origin, by the way. Now, the Saxons that settled in England, they're the same Saxons that are in Germany. In Germany, there are Saxons in Lower Saxony, which is the area of what is now northwestern Germany. And then there's Upper Saxony, which is the area, the southern part of the eastern part of Germany. Of course, those Saxons speak German now, and the Saxons in England speak English. But this split occurred in the 400s. And of course, in the 400s, they spoke the same language on either side of the North Sea. And for centuries after, they could probably understand each other. But as the time went on, linguistic drift occurred, and English developed as a separate language from German. And then they became mutually unintelligible. Now, England was originally, even before the Romans arrived, was originally Celtic, but there were people there before the Celts. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. Before the Romans arrived in Britain, what is now England and Wales were Celts, Brythonic Celts, like the Welsh, the modern Welsh today. And then, of course, there were the Picts, was now Scotland, and ancestors of the Irish in Ireland. And then, after the Saxons arrived, before the Celts, there were people there. There were people there before the Celts. Stonehenge was not built by the Celts, contrary to what some people might believe. It was built long before there were any Celts in Britain. No one knows for sure who built Stonehenge. And it's also interesting to note that in the area around Stonehenge, there are other remains, wooden remains, post holes and so on in the ground from structures similar to Stonehenge that were built before Stonehenge was, but that were built of wood instead of stone. And I believe there is some evidence of that going back as far as 9,000 years in the past. Stonehenge itself is about 4,000 years old or so. And the Celts weren't in Britain quite that long ago. Stonehenge itself, of course, is an important accomplishment for whoever built it. Stones are very heavy that had to be moved and lifted. Of course, it is thought that Stonehenge was some kind of a calendar device, some kind of an astronomical or calendar device. But no one knows who built it. Now, back to New Mexico, which I talked about in my last video, there's something called the Sun Dagger at Chaco Canyon, which is an Indian ruin in what is now northwestern New Mexico. The Sun Dagger, every day, I think it's summer solstice, a dagger of light goes through a rock formation onto the wall of one of the old ruins. It's called the Sun Dagger, and it only happens for a few minutes on the solstice. But it had to be all very carefully lined up, and those Anasazi Indians had to know what they were doing and know when the solstice was and exactly where the sun was going to be on the solstice. They had to know all that in order to make the Sun Dagger thing work. And there's other American Indian tribes that had calendar or devices similar to, or astronomical devices similar to Stonehenge. Another interesting thing, this is in South America, the Nazca Lines. There are, in the desert, in a certain part of South America, I forget what country it is, but Peru, I think it is. But anyway, there are these very, very large patterns of stone on the ground. If you're standing in the midst of it, you won't see anything. You only see the patterns, which are huge, hundreds, thousands of feet across. You only see the patterns if you're high up in the air and look down on them. Now, some people say, oh, there must have been ancient aliens there helping them. But I thought of a way that they could do it without having any advanced technology. Each design could have been mapped out, like on sand, maybe, on a small scale. And each map could have been divided up into sections, a grid pattern maybe. Then the grid pattern could have been laid out with string and poles and so on the where they were going to put the pattern over the large area, and they could just fill it in square by square with stones. Then they wouldn't need any advanced technology. They could have done it that way. That's just an idea I came up with. I don't know if anyone else has come up with that or not, but that's one way they could have done it. I know, for example, I did a similar thing doing a portrait of someone. I tried setting up doing portraits for money. I only did one portrait and then gave up on it. A woman came to me when I was set up at the University of New Mexico campus in Albuquerque. I did have approval. I had a permit to do this. I took a Polaroid photo of her face. Then I told her to come back in a little while, and I quickly divided up the photo carefully into a grid pattern, transferred that grid pattern onto a piece of paper, filled it in, then traced it onto a fresh piece of paper, and then filled in the fine details And voila, I had a pretty good portrait of the woman. Remember, I charged her $5 for it. But that's the only one I did. They could have used the same technique to build the Nazca lines, I would think. Well, I know I got off on tangents. So this is Dr. Nuke signing off for now.